I was watching birds outside my window when my phone rang. It was my son Marcus. His words came out fast and cold. "Mom, we're leaving for Australia tomorrow. I sold your garden and your piano. We needed cash. Goodbye." Then he was gone. Just like that. 42 years of loving him, feeding him, teaching him, and he threw me away like old newspapers. But I smiled softly because Marcus didn't know something important. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 69 years old. And until that phone call, I believed I understood my boy. My husband Thomas died 7 months back. He fell asleep one night after we watched our favorite cooking show together. We ate popcorn like we always did on Tuesday nights. He held my hand and whispered, "Tomorrow we'll plant those roses you wanted." But tomorrow never came for him. After Thomas left us, Marcus started coming around more often. Or that's what I believed at the time. He visited 4 times each week. He carried my shopping bags and fixed my broken fence. He even told me to get my teeth checked. "Mom, you must look after yourself now that you're living alone," he said with that grin I mistook for kindness. But now I saw it was really about waiting. The garden had been our happy place for many years. Thomas and I created it when Marcus turned 12 with lots of saving and hard digging. Every spring we planted new flowers there, watched butterflies dance, had birthday parties under the big oak tree. Marcus brought his girlfriends there and later his wife Sandra. I baked cakes for everyone, swept the paths and watered every plant. It was what our family did together. I never imagined he'd see it as just dollar signs. And the piano, that beautiful instrument Thomas polished every weekend, played songs for me on quiet evenings, kept the keys shining like new pearls. Marcus knew that piano held Thomas's spirit. His favorite melody still echoed in my mind when I sat near it. When Marcus hung up, I sat there in that hard blue waiting chair, watching other people hold their sick loved ones. And something changed inside my chest. A strange peace I hadn't felt since Thomas stopped breathing. Because right then I remembered something I'd completely pushed away. 4 days before dying, Thomas gave me a brown paper package. "Eleanor, hide this in your closet behind the winter coats. If I'm not here anymore, open it when you feel strong enough, but wait until you're truly ready." I tucked it away without thinking twice. After the funeral, with all that crying and paperwork and sad visitors, my mind just forgot about it. But that package was waiting for me back home. The nurse told me to go inside. The doctor looked at my heartbeat and said I was healthy for someone my age, just needed better sleep and more vegetables. I nodded and smiled politely, but my thoughts were somewhere else. I kept thinking about that package, about how mean Marcus sounded, and how Sandra probably pushed him into this whole mess. She never wanted me around. She always looked at me like I was a broken toy. I walked out slowly and headed to the bus station. My car was gone now, Marcus made sure of that. But while I waited for the bus, I couldn't stop smiling just a tiny bit. There was something beautiful about this whole strange situation. My son believed he'd taken everything from me. But what Marcus didn't understand was that Thomas, my sweet Thomas, always thought about tomorrow. The bus came and I found a seat next to the window. I stared at the city moving past me. The shops, the parks, people running around with their own secrets and problems. I had my secrets too. And very soon I would discover what they meant. When I got to my house, I walked straight into my bedroom. I opened the closet and pushed aside the winter coats. And there sat the brown paper package right where I'd hidden it. My fingers shook a little as I picked it up. I could feel papers and other things inside. Thomas had written my name across the front in his careful handwriting. I sat down on our bed where we'd slept together for so many years, and breathed in slowly. Outside the window, the sky was turning orange and pink, and shadows filled my house with those familiar shapes that didn't frighten me anymore. I opened the package carefully, like unwrapping a birthday present from long ago. What I discovered inside made my heart beat faster in my chest. What I found in that package stole the air from my lungs. There were legal papers, ownership certificates, bank documents, and a letter Thomas wrote by hand. Tears filled my eyes as I recognized his neat writing style. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading these words, It means I've already left you behind. Please forgive me for keeping secrets while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from stress and worry. Through all our years together, I invested our money into land and small businesses. We don't just own the garden Marcus sold. We own 8 other pieces of land, including the shopping center where Marcus and Sandra have their coffee shop. We also own pieces of 4 different companies that are worth more money than you can dream about. You are wealthy, my love. You always had wealth in your heart, but now you have it on paper too. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I looked through each paper. There were certificates for land in different parts of town, a big parking lot near the hospital, a storage building by the river, and yes, the 3-story shopping center where my son ran his business. Thomas had been the quiet owner for 12 years but registered everything under a company name nobody knew about. According to these papers, I was the only person who would inherit that company. There were also statements from bank accounts I never knew existed with numbers that looked impossible. Thomas drove a delivery truck for 38 years, but apparently he'd also been incredibly clever with investments. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made together, he'd grown it in secret, and I never suspected anything. In his letter, Thomas explained he kept everything hidden because he didn't want me stressed about finances or for Marcus to learn about our real money situation. You know our son, Eleanor, if Marcus discovered we had this much wealth, he would act differently. I want him to love us for who we are inside, not what we own. What a sad joke. Our son had abandoned us thinking we owned nothing when really we owned almost everything around him. That night sleep wouldn't come. I walked through my house touching the worn furniture and the little decorations Marcus always criticized for being too old-fashioned. I looked at our family pictures hanging on every wall, especially the photograph where he was 6 years old, sitting on Thomas's shoulders and laughing with pure joy. Where did that sweet little boy disappear to? When did he turn into someone so heartless and greedy? Early next morning my phone rang again. It was Marcus calling. His voice sounded different now, sweeter, but I'd already learned not to trust when his tone changed like that. Mom, how are you feeling today? I wanted to tell you we already got the money from selling the garden and your piano. We put your portion into your bank account. It's not a fortune, but it'll keep you going for a couple months while you find something smaller to live in. My portion? I asked, keeping my voice very calm. Yes, Mom. Obviously we weren't going to leave you with 0. We gave you 25%. That's more than fair, right? We need this money for our restaurant plan in Australia. Sandra has an amazing opportunity waiting over there. 25% of my own belongings. How incredibly generous of them. See, sweetheart. And when exactly do you fly out? This evening. Our suitcases are already sitting by the door. We'll be gone for at least 8 months. Maybe longer if the restaurant does well. But don't you worry, Mom. When we come back, we'll help you locate a tiny apartment. Something perfect for your needs. Perfect for my needs. As if he had any idea what I needed. K. Marcus, travel safely. Mom. I knew you'd be understanding. You've always been so forgiving and kind. We love you so very much. Then he hung up. I stood there holding my phone. And for the first time in many months I actually laughed out loud. I laughed harder than I had since Thomas died. The whole situation was so ridiculous it became funny. My son had stolen from me, kicked me out of my own property, spoke to me like I was a confused child, and all to pay for a restaurant adventure that would probably fail within weeks. But what hurt me deepest wasn't about the money at all. It was how easily he erased me. 42 years of my life poured into him, of sacrifices, of loving him without conditions, and he deleted me from his world with one quick phone call. That was what really broke my heart. I checked my bank account on my computer. Sure enough, they'd deposited an amount that probably seemed kind to them but felt like an insult to me. They'd sold the garden for way less than its real value, probably because they needed cash immediately, and they'd sold Thomas's piano for almost nothing. That afternoon, I watched from my window as Marcus and Sandra loaded their bags into a taxi. He carried 3 huge suitcases. She had a fancy purse that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. I watched them giggle, hold hands, and make excited plans. They looked like 2 kids going to summer camp. They never once glanced toward my window. never waved goodbye. When their taxi drove away, I sat in my kitchen with hot chocolate and Thomas's documents spread across the table. I needed to make some important choices. I could hire a lawyer, take back my properties, and reclaim everything they'd stolen. But something inside told me there was a smarter approach to handle this, a more educational method. I called Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who'd managed Thomas's paperwork. He'd attended the funeral, offered me his sympathy, and said to reach out if I ever needed help. Well, now I needed his help badly. "Mrs. Hayes, it's wonderful to hear your voice. How have you been managing?" "I'm managing quite well, Mr. Harrison. I need to meet with you urgently. I discovered some papers from Thomas that confuse me. Certainly you can visit my office tomorrow morning if that works. I'll be there waiting." That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply and peacefully. I dreamed about Thomas. He sat in his favorite recliner reading his newspaper, exactly like every morning before. And when he noticed me watching, he smiled warmly and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you remembered your own strength." I woke up with an unusual feeling. It wasn't quite happiness, but it definitely wasn't the sadness that had lived in my chest for so many months. It felt something like determination mixed with purpose. For the first time since Thomas's passing, I had a clear goal ahead of me. I was going to reclaim what belonged to me, but not in the way Marcus would expect me to handle it. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I wore my purple dress, the one Thomas always said made me look dignified and elegant. I fixed my hair nicely and added just a little makeup. And when I checked my reflection in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in quite a while. I saw someone strong looking back at me. Mr. Harrison's office sat downtown in an older but beautiful building with shiny floors and tall windows everywhere. He welcomed me with a kind smile, but when I showed him Thomas's documents, his whole expression transformed completely. "Mrs. Hayes, this is far beyond what I imagined. Thomas was an exceptionally smart man. Look here, according to these papers, you own I know Mr. Harrison. I've studied them already. What I need to understand is what I can do legally about this situation." Mr. Harrison explained that everything was perfectly legal, that the documents were real and that I was the rightful owner of all those properties and businesses. He also confirmed something I'd already guessed. The sale of my garden was completely illegal because Marcus had no authority to sell it. "We can recover the garden immediately, Mrs. Hayes, and we can also take legal action against your son for theft and fraud." "No, Mr. Harrison. I don't want to take legal action yet. I want to handle this differently. I want everything to stay secret for now. Can you help me with that?" He studied me with curiosity in his eyes, but he nodded slowly. "Of course, you're my client. What do you need from me?" "I need you to quietly get my garden back. Do whatever paperwork is necessary to cancel that fake sale. And I need you to help me take real control of all my properties, especially the shopping center where my son has his coffee shop." "I understand completely. It will take several weeks to process, but it's entirely possible to accomplish." "Perfect. And Mr. Harrison, nobody can know I'm behind any of this, at least not yet." When I left his office, I felt like I'd woken up from a very long sleep. I walked through the downtown streets observing the people, the buildings, the normal life continuing around me. But for me, absolutely everything had changed in one morning. I had a plan now. The next few weeks were the strangest period of my entire life. Officially, I remained a poor widow who'd been abandoned by her only child. But secretly, I was a wealthy woman quietly working to recover my stolen assets. Mr. Harrison worked fast and efficiently, calling me every few days with updates about our progress. I decided to keep living in my house for the time being. After all, it belonged to me, even though Marcus probably expected me to move into a single room somewhere cheap. Every morning I woke up, ate breakfast at the same table where Thomas and I had shared countless meals, and then walked around my neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that mixture of pity and curiosity they save for recent widows. Beatrice, my neighbor since forever, approached me one afternoon while I watered the flowers by my front steps. "Eleanor, dear, Is it true that Marcus flew to Australia and left you completely alone? Yes, Beatrice, he went with Sandra. They're planning to open a restaurant over there. And how will you survive, sweetie? Everyone knows Thomas didn't leave much money behind. If you only knew the truth, I thought to myself. Don't worry about me, Beatrice. I'll figure things out just fine. Do you need anything at all? I can bring you some soup, help you carry groceries from the store. You're very thoughtful, but I'm managing perfectly well, really. Beatrice looked at me with that expression I recognized too well. It was the same look I'd received after Thomas's funeral. Pity mixed with a bit of relief that tragedy hadn't struck her family instead. Well, you know exactly where to find me if you need any help at all. These types of conversations happened constantly everywhere I went. The butcher, the baker, the woman at the pharmacy. Everyone spoke to me with that gentle tone people use with unfortunate souls, and I would nod politely, smile gratefully, and thank them for caring. But inside my mind, part of me enjoyed this little performance I was giving. Felt like living two completely separate lives at the same time. Mr. Harrison called me one Wednesday morning with exciting news. Mrs. Hayes, I have good news to share. I managed to cancel the sale of your garden. The buyers didn't realize the sale was illegal, so they received their money back without complications. The garden belongs to you again. Excellent work, Mr. Harrison. And what about the shopping center where Marcus has his business? That situation is more complicated to navigate. Technically, you've always owned it through the company structure, but we need to make some administrative adjustments so you have direct control over it. That process should take roughly 2 more weeks. Perfect. Please keep me informed of everything. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen with my coffee and thought about Marcus. He'd been in Australia for 4 weeks now, and I hadn't heard a single word from him. Not a phone call, not a text message, not even a postcard with koalas on it. To him, I had simply stopped existing the exact moment he got the money he wanted. But I knew that situation was about to change very soon. I decided to visit my garden. I took the bus to the edge of town, the same route Thomas and I had traveled hundreds of times together. The garden looked exactly like I remembered it, surrounded by a white fence with roses climbing up the sides and the big oak tree standing proud in the center. The new owners had added some metal garden chairs near the entrance, but otherwise everything remained the same. I sat on the sidewalk across the street and stared at it for over an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Marcus was small, running between the flower beds and chasing butterflies with his little net. Thomas grilling hamburgers while I mixed lemonade in the kitchen shed. Marcus bringing friends over, then girlfriends, then Sandra. All those joyful moments that he'd reduced to a simple business deal. An older woman came out of the garden gate and noticed me sitting there watching. She walked over with concern on her face. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you kindly. I'm just remembering old times. I used to know the previous owners." Yes, I knew them quite well actually. What a terrible shame about what happened to them. They told us the elderly woman was very ill and needed to sell quickly for medical bills. We thought we'd found a bargain, but then we discovered the sale wasn't legal at all. We had to return the property. Did you know them personally? No, actually. We handled everything through real estate agents. But they told us the son was managing everything because his mother couldn't handle business matters anymore. Such a sad situation for everyone involved. If you only knew how truly sad it really was, I thought quietly. Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money in this mess. Yes, thankfully everything worked out okay for us. Though now we need to search for another garden property. We really loved this particular one so much. I left there feeling heavy in my heart. It wasn't only about the money that hurt me so deeply. It was the ease with which Marcus had lied about me to strangers. He'd invented a story about my supposed illness. He'd used my fake vulnerability to justify stealing from me. To him, I wasn't a real person with feelings anymore, just an obstacle he needed to remove from his path. That evening, I called Mr. Harrison again with another request. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to help me with something else now. I want to get Thomas's piano back too." "That will be significantly more difficult, Mrs. Hayes. The piano was registered in your name, but your son had a power of attorney document that allowed him to sell your possessions. How is that even possible? I never gave him that permission. Apparently, you signed that power of attorney several months ago after your husband passed away. Don't you remember doing that? There it was, the exact moment Marcus had begun planning this entire scheme. I vaguely remembered signing some papers he'd brought to my house, telling me they were to simplify funeral arrangements and inheritance procedures. I'd been so lost in grief that I signed without reading anything. How foolish I'd been. I understand now, Mr. Harrison. Is there any possible way to get it back? We can certainly try, but it will be more complicated than the garden. We would need to prove that you signed that power of attorney under false pretenses or emotional manipulation. Let's do exactly that. I want to recover everything they took from me. Over the following weeks, I developed a strange daily routine. In the mornings, I played the role of the poor widow everyone knew and pitied. I went out to buy necessities, chatted with neighbors, and maintained my act perfectly. But in the afternoons, I transformed into a businesswoman. I studied Thomas's documents carefully, talked frequently with Mr. Harrison, and planned my next moves. I learned things about finance and business I never thought I'd need to understand. I discovered that Thomas had been far more intelligent than I'd ever realized. Every single one of his investments had been carefully calculated and researched. The shopping center where Marcus worked, for example, wasn't just profitable from rent payments. It was located in an area that was growing rapidly in value. I also discovered that Sandra, Marcus's wife, had accumulated many debts over the years. She'd taken out loans using the coffee shop as security, not knowing she wasn't the actual owner of the building. When the banks figured out this truth, she was going to face serious legal trouble. Mr. Harrison called me one Friday with important information. Mrs. Hayes, we've completed all the necessary paperwork. You now have total control of every one of your properties. I also managed to recover Thomas's piano. The buyer happened to be a colleague of mine, and when I explained your situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small financial compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Harrison. Now I need you to help me with one final thing. I want you to send a letter to my son. What type of letter do you have in mind? An eviction notice for his coffee shop. There was complete silence on the other end of the phone line. Mrs. Hayes, are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Completely certain. He decided I wasn't important in his life anymore. Now he's going to discover exactly how important I truly am. I understand your feelings. Do you want me to send it to Australia?
No.
I want you to deliver it to him when he returns home. I have a strong feeling that's going to happen very soon. I wasn't wrong about my prediction. That same afternoon, Beatrice came running to my house with fresh neighborhood gossip. Eleanor, did you hear that Sandra is in big trouble with the bank? My cousin who works there told me they're investigating some loans she took out using the coffee shop as collateral, but it turns out the building isn't hers to use. Really? That's news to me. Yes, indeed. And apparently Marcus doesn't know anything about it yet. People are saying she's going to have to fly back from Australia to sort out this huge mess. What a complicated situation for them. Yes, it certainly is. And the worst part is apparently Sandra lied to Marcus about their business plans in Australia too. There was never any restaurant opportunity. She just wanted to escape the debts she'd hidden here. Perfect. Everything was working out exactly as I'd hoped it would. Marcus had trusted Sandra completely, had sacrificed his relationship with me for her, and now he was discovering she wasn't the person he believed her to be. That night, I sat on my porch with tea and looked up at the stars twinkling above. Thomas used to say that stars were the spirits of people who'd lived good lives watching over their families from heaven. If that was true, then he was up there right now, watching his plan unfold exactly as he'd designed it. Thank you, my love, I whispered to the night sky. Thank you for protecting me even after you left this world. The next day, Mr. Harrison called me very early in the morning. Mrs. Hayes, I have some news. Your son just arrived back in the country. He's at the airport right now, completely alone. Alone? You mean without Sandra? Yes, exactly. Apparently they had a massive fight in Australia. There are rumors she stayed behind with someone else she met there.
Is he?
Did you send the eviction letter? I'm sending it today by special courier. He should receive it by tomorrow afternoon. I hung up the phone and stood there in my kitchen, feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation building inside me. After so many weeks of silent planning and preparation, the moment for my first real move had finally arrived. Marcus was about to discover that his mother was not the helpless victim he'd believed her to be. Marcus arrived at his coffee shop on Tuesday evening. I knew this because Beatrice, who seemed to have informants everywhere in town, came to tell me the very next day. Eleanor, your son came back last night looking absolutely terrible. I saw him go into the shop with just one small suitcase, and he looked pale and exhausted, like he'd been crying during the entire flight home. Was he alone? Completely alone, yes. And something strange happened, Eleanor. When he tried to unlock the shop door, he didn't have his keys. He had to ask the building manager to let him in with the emergency copy. How interesting. Sandra must have kept the keys, which meant she'd probably decided not to return at all. Or maybe Marcus had discovered something about her in Australia and had run away from her. Either way, my son was back home, and very soon he would receive my little welcome surprise. Mr. Harrison called me that same afternoon. Mrs. Hayes, the eviction letter was delivered 1 hour ago. The building manager confirmed that your son received it personally. Perfect. How long did we give him to vacate? 30 days to leave the premises as per standard legal requirements. But Mrs. Hayes, are you completely sure you want to go through with this? He is your son after all. Mr. Harrison, my son kicked me out of my own home with one quick phone call. He sold my belongings without asking my permission. He treated me like worthless garbage. Now he's going to learn that actions have real consequences. I understand your position. I just wanted to make sure you've considered all the potential implications. I have considered everything, Mr. Harrison. Every single thing. That night, sleep wouldn't come to me. I stayed awake imagining Marcus's face when he read that letter. The initial confusion, then the disbelief, then the rising panic. He would probably think it was some kind of mistake or scam, that someone was trying to trick him. But when he called to verify the information, he would discover that everything was completely legal and real. The next day, as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment, my phone rang at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was Marcus, and his voice sounded absolutely desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you right away. Good morning, sweetheart. How was Australia? Mom, I don't have time for small talk right now. I received a very weird letter yesterday. It says I have to leave my coffee shop in 30 days. It must be some kind of mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice. How very strange. From whom exactly? From a company I've never even heard of before. It's called Wait, let me find the letter. Thomas Properties Limited. Do you know this company at all? Thomas had used his own name for the company structure. How perfectly poetic. No, sweetheart. I've never heard that name before in my life. Are you absolutely sure the letter is real and legitimate? That's exactly what I'm trying to find out, Mom. I need you to help me figure this out. I don't know what to do anymore. Sandra left me in Australia. She ran off with a surf instructor, and now I come home to find this waiting for me. I don't understand what's happening to my life. There was my confirmation. Sandra had abandoned him completely. Probably when their money ran out or when she realized the legal problems back home were more serious than she'd thought. Poor Marcus. He'd sacrificed his family for a worthless woman. I'm so sorry to hear that, sweetheart. Where are you staying now? I'm at the apartment above the shop, but I don't know for how much longer. Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone I can trust. I don't have anyone else left. The irony was absolutely perfect. Now that he'd been left without the woman for whom he'd abandoned me, he suddenly remembered he had a mother. Course, sweetheart. Come over whenever you're ready. I'm here for you. I'm coming right now. I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I had to be absolutely perfect for this performance. I put on my simplest gray dress, pulled my hair into a plain bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Marcus arrived, He would see exactly what he expected to see. A poor, vulnerable widow who'd been abandoned by her own child. Marcus arrived 1 hour later. When I opened the front door, I was genuinely surprised at how terrible he looked. He'd lost considerable weight, had deep dark circles under both eyes, and his expensive clothes looked wrinkled and dirty. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Mom," he said, and for one brief moment I thought he was going to hug me, but he stopped himself as if he suddenly remembered how things had ended between us. "Come inside, sweetheart. Would you like some tea?" "Yes, please, that would be nice." We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I'd read Thomas's documents weeks earlier. Marcus looked small and lost in that chair, exactly like when he was a child and came to tell me about his problems at school. "Mom, I'm so terribly sorry for the way I left you here. I know I didn't treat you well at all. It's all in the past now, sweetheart." "No, it's not just in the past. I treated you horribly. I said terrible things to you," and now his voice broke apart. "Now I have absolutely no one left in my life." "What happened with Sandra?" "She left me for a 28-year-old surfing instructor in Sydney. It turns out there was never any restaurant opportunity in Australia at all. It was all a complete lie. She just wanted to escape the debts she'd accumulated here and use the money from selling your garden to fund her escape plan." "All what debts?" "So many debts, Mom. It seems she'd been taking out loans for years and years, using our coffee shop as collateral. But now I discover she wasn't even the owner of the building we work in." "How is that even possible?" "Here was my perfect opportunity." "I don't know, sweetheart. Property matters are incredibly complicated. The problem now is that the banks are coming after me for her debts. They say since we were married, I'm equally responsible for everything she borrowed. And on top of all that, this eviction notice. Mom, I honestly don't know what to do anymore. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live." He started crying. Real tears of genuine desperation and fear. And for one brief moment, my mother's heart softened toward him. I wanted to hug him tight, comfort him, tell him everything would work out fine. But then I remembered the coldness in his voice when he called me from his apartment. The ease with which he'd thrown me away like trash. The way he'd spoken to me as if I were a burden he couldn't wait to remove. "Did you talk to a lawyer about this letter?" "I don't have money for any lawyer, Mom. We spent absolutely everything in Australia. Sandra took whatever little was left when she ran off with that instructor. So what are you planning to do now?" "I don't know at all. I thought maybe I could stay here with you for just a little while, only until I find some kind of work and can afford a small place to rent." There was the question I'd been waiting weeks to hear. After kicking me out of my own home, after selling my precious belongings, after treating me like worthless garbage, he now wanted me to rescue him. He wanted the poor widow he'd created to save him from the consequences of his own terrible choices. "Course, sweetheart, this will always be your home no matter what." Marcus looked at me with genuine surprise, as if he hadn't expected it to be this easy for him. "Really, Mom, after everything that happened between us? You are my son, Marcus. That will never change no matter what you do." He stood up, and this time he did hug me. It was a desperate hug from someone drowning and clinging to the only thing floating nearby. I hugged him back too, but not with the unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace. Strategy and purpose. "Thank you so much, Mom. I promise I'll find work very soon. I won't be a burden on you for long. Don't worry about any of that right now. Just rest, recover your strength, and then we'll figure out what your options are." Marcus left that afternoon to collect some belongings from his apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how simple it had all been. He'd come to me exactly as I'd planned it, broken, desperate, with absolutely no options left. And best of all, he suspected absolutely nothing. To him, I remained the poor abandoned mother who needed his pity. But this was only the first part of my careful plan. Having him live here with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let him settle in comfortably, feel safe and secure, and believe he'd found a refuge in my house. And then, when he least expected anything, I was going to teach him the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Harrison with another request. Mr. Harrison, I need you to do something else for me now. Tell me, Mrs. Hayes, what do you need? I want you to investigate Sandra's debts thoroughly. I want to know exactly how much she owes, to whom she owes it, and what legal options exist to separate them from my son's responsibility. That will take considerable time, but it's definitely feasible to accomplish. Perfect. And Mr. Harrison, I want you to keep this in absolute secrecy. Nobody can know I'm behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Hayes, everything is confidential. May I ask what your final plan is here? My plan, Mr. Harrison, is very simple really. I'm going to save my son from this mess, but first he needs to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom completely. When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the special wine Thomas had been saving for important occasions. It had been such a long time since I'd had a truly special occasion like this one. The game had finally begun, and for the first time in many months, I held all the winning cards in my hand. Marcus moved into my house the very next day. He arrived with 2 worn suitcases and 1 cardboard box, everything that remained of his previous comfortable life. I watched him unpack in his old childhood bedroom, the same room he'd slept in during his teenage years, and I could see the shame and humiliation in every single one of his movements. He'd gone from living in a modern apartment to taking shelter in his childhood bedroom. Mom, I found this in the apartment, he said, showing me a brown paper envelope. It was hidden among Sandra's things. Has your name written on it? It was another one of Thomas's envelopes. My heart started racing, but I kept my face perfectly calm. My name. How odd. Yes, look here. He showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written in Thomas's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I'd found in my closet. This one was smaller and newer looking. Maybe Sandra found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to you, Marcus suggested. It's certainly possible. May I see it? I opened the envelope right in front of him. Inside was a brief letter and a small silver key. The letter said, Eleanor, if you're reading this after receiving the main envelope, it means our son is going through a very difficult time in his life. This key opens a safety deposit box at the downtown bank. The number is 189. There's something there that can help you help him, but use it very wisely. With all my love forever, Thomas. Marcus read the letter over my shoulder with growing excitement. A safety deposit box. Dad had a safety deposit box we didn't know about. I had no idea about this at all. I lied smoothly. Your father never mentioned anything like this to me. Do you think we should go see what's inside it? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe it's better to leave things exactly as they are. But Mom, maybe there's something important in there. Documents, or I don't know, maybe something valuable that could help us survive this situation. The desperation in his voice was so obvious. Marcus was clinging to any tiny possibility of finding a way out of his terrible situation, and I was going to let him cling just a little bit longer before I showed him the complete reality. Okay, I said after a calculated pause. We can go look tomorrow morning. That night Marcus and I ate dinner together for the first time in many months. He'd cooked something simple, trying to be helpful and useful, but the food tasted of guilt and desperation. He told me more details about what had happened in Australia, and each story was worse than the one before. Sandra lied about absolutely everything, Mom, not just the restaurant but the debts too. I thought she only owed a small amount of money, but it turns out she owes over $90,000 to various banks and lenders. And the worst part is she used my name for some of those loans without me knowing anything. How is that even possible? She forged my signature on documents. When I married her, I gave her some papers to manage our joint banking account. I never imagined she'd use them for something like this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know about these loans? Have no idea. It's all so incredibly complicated and confusing. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all her debts regardless. And what about divorce? I don't even know where Sandra is right now. Her phone is completely disconnected. She doesn't answer any emails. Nothing at all. It's like she vanished into thin air. Perfect. Sandra had run away like the coward she'd always been, leaving Marcus to face the consequences of her actions all alone. In a way, she'd done me a huge favor. Now my son was experiencing exactly what I had felt when he abandoned me. Betrayal by someone he'd completely trusted with his whole heart. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't realize things were this terrible for you. I didn't either, Mom. I thought Sandra loved me, that we were going to build something beautiful together. But it turns out I was just an easy way for her to get money and legal documents to use however she wanted. Marcus started crying again openly. How could I have been so incredibly stupid? How did I not see who she really was the whole time? It was tempting to tell him that I'd seen the warning signs from the very beginning, that I tried to warn him multiple times that Sandra never seemed trustworthy to me, but that would have shattered my facade as a compassionate and vulnerable mother. Love can be very blinding sometimes, sweetheart. Don't blame yourself too harshly. But Mom, I didn't just destroy my own life. I destroyed yours too. I treated you horribly and cruelly. I took your garden, your piano, your peace of mind, and all to give everything to a woman who abandoned me at the first sign of trouble. Now we're both struggling to survive because of my terrible mistakes. It's all in the past, Marcus. We'll figure things out together. No, it's not in the past at all. Now we're both in serious trouble because of my selfish decisions. You lost everything Dad left for you, and I lost my marriage and my entire future. We're two struggling people trying to survive day by day. If he only knew the truth. I thought to myself that at this very moment I had more money than he could possibly imagine in his wildest dreams, that I owned the building where he worked, that I could solve all his problems with one single phone call. But it wasn't time yet for that revelation. The next day we went to the bank together. Marcus was nervous and hopeful at the same time. I maintained my act as a confused widow who didn't understand much about complicated financial matters. The bank employee led us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my identification carefully, and opened box number 189. Inside were jewels and precious items. Many beautiful jewels. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Thomas's family that had been passed down for generations. Others were completely new to me and quite stunning. There was also a detailed letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate current value. Marcus gasped loudly. Mom, this must be worth a small fortune. Do you really think so? Yes, definitely. Look at this ruby ring and this diamond necklace. Mom, Dad saved a real treasure here for us. According to Thomas's letter, the jewels were worth approximately $175,000 total. It was a significant amount of money, but it was absolutely nothing compared to the rest of my assets. It was like finding a few coins under the couch cushions when you have $1 million in the bank. What should we do with all this, Mom? I don't know, sweetheart. They're precious family memories and heirlooms. But Mom, we could sell some of these pieces. With this money you could get your garden back, and I could pay off some of Sandra's debts that are in my name. There it was again. Even when he found something valuable and precious, Marcus's first reaction was thinking about how to use it to solve the problems Sandra had created. He hadn't learned a single thing yet. Are you absolutely sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Sandra's debts? What other option do I possibly have, Mom? If I don't pay something soon, the banks are going to take legal action against me. And technically I don't own anything anymore. Everything was in Sandra's name. Think very carefully, sweetheart. Once you sell these precious jewels, you won't be able to get them back ever. I know that, but what else can I do? I can't get any job with all these legal claims pending against me. No employer is going to want to hire someone with so many serious legal problems hanging over them. We took the jewels back to my house. Marcus spread them out carefully on the kitchen table and examined them one by one, calculating which ones he could sell and which he could keep. It was painful to watch him reduce decades of family history and love to simple numbers on a spreadsheet. Mom, I think I can get about $160,000 for these jewels, he said one afternoon, studying a valuation list on the kitchen table. It's less than I'd hoped for, but it's enough to pay off the most urgent debts hanging over me. Are you completely sure you want to do this? I have absolutely no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll take everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some kind of legal connection to any properties. How perfectly ironic the situation was. Marcus was worried about losing a house that I actually owned, paying the debts of a woman who'd abandoned him with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who'd created the fortune that could save him instantly. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I talked to a free financial counselor at the community center. She told me to prioritize the debts that have real collateral attached because those are the ones that can lead to property seizure or immediate legal action. Marcus had matured so much in these few short weeks. The man who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully researching every financial decision he made. The suffering had made him more responsible and thoughtful, but also more fragile and broken. That night, while he was organizing the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Mr. Harrison. "Mrs. Hayes, I have a complete report on Sandra's debts. The situation is worse than we initially thought." "How much worse exactly?" "She owes over $185,000 to several banks and also has debts with private lenders charging very high interest. What's more concerning is that she used falsified documents with your son's signature for some of these loans. That means Marcus could be held legally responsible. It's very complicated. If we can prove he didn't know about any of this, we might be able to get him out of some of the debts. But it's going to be a long and extremely expensive legal process." "How expensive are we talking about?" "For a good lawyer specializing in these types of fraud cases, probably $45,000 minimum, and there's no guarantee of success." "I understand the situation. And what if he just pays the debts outright?" "If he has access to that amount of money, that would be the fastest solution by far, but I seriously doubt he has access to that kind of money. Mr. Harrison, I want you to prepare all the necessary legal documents to get my son out of these debts completely. But don't tell him anything yet about this. You're going to pay for everything, Mrs. Hayes. I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my son properly, but this has to be handled in a very specific way according to my plan." When I hung up, I found Marcus in the living room staring at the jewels with a deeply sad expression on his face. He looked lost and broken, like a child who'd broken his favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it or make it right again. "What are you thinking about, sweetheart?" "About Dad. About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life. Your father loved you very much, Marcus. He would understand your situation. He taught me to be responsible, to value family above everything, not to be selfish and greedy. And I did the exact opposite of everything he taught me. I abandoned my mother for a woman who turned out to be a complete liar. I sold my family's precious memories for quick money. I destroyed everything he built with his own hands over decades." For the first time since he'd returned, I heard genuine regret in his voice. It wasn't just lamenting the consequences of his actions anymore, but a true acknowledgement that he'd done something morally wrong and hurtful. "People make terrible mistakes, sweetheart. The important thing is to learn from them and grow." "But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I possibly fix the damage I've done to you?" There was the question I'd been waiting weeks to hear from him. Marcus was finally ready to face the complete truth about his actions and their consequences. But it wasn't yet time to reveal my final card to him. First, I had to let him hit rock bottom completely and fully. The next several days were crucial for my plan. Marcus decided to sell most of the jewels, keeping only the wedding ring Thomas had given me and a small locket that had belonged to his grandmother. I watched him prepare to visit jewelry stores, research fair prices, and negotiate with various buyers. It was painful to watch him reduce decades of family history to cold commercial transactions, but it was absolutely necessary for him to understand the real weight of his decisions and choices. "Mom, I got $160,000 for the jewels," he told me one afternoon, counting cash and checks on the kitchen table. "It's less than I'd hoped for, but it's enough to pay off the most urgent debts that are threatening legal action." "Are you absolutely certain you want to do this?" "I have no other choice at all. If I don't pay something substantial soon, they'll take everything from both of us. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some legal connection to properties through my marriage to Sandra." How ironic the situation truly was. Marcus was worried about losing a house that I owned completely, paying the debts of a woman who'd abandoned him with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who'd created the fortune that could save him instantly. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I talked to a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts that have real collateral because those are the ones that can lead to property foreclosure or immediate seizure. Marcus had matured dramatically in these few weeks. The man who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully investigating every financial decision. The suffering had made him more responsible but also more humble and fragile. That night, while he was organizing the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Mr. Harrison with important news. "Mrs. Hayes, I have important news to share. We managed to locate Sandra finally." "Where is she now?" "In Sydney, Australia, just as your son suspected. But here's the interesting part. She's trying to get Australian residency through a fraudulent marriage with that surf instructor your son mentioned." "A fraudulent marriage?" "Yes, exactly. Apparently, the young man needs money and she needs legal papers to stay in the country. But the most important thing is that we found solid evidence that she deliberately falsified your son's documents with a clear intention of fleeing the country permanently. That means Marcus can get out of the debts completely. With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and manipulation. Your son won't have to pay anything for what Sandra did behind his back without his knowledge." It was absolutely perfect. I had a way to save Marcus from all his debts legally without him suspecting that I had the money to do it easily. "Mr. Harrison, I want you to start the legal process immediately. Don't tell my son anything yet about this. I want the process to be completely finished before I inform him. I don't want to give him false hope that might not work out." "Understood completely. This will take about 4 weeks, maybe slightly longer." Perfect timing. When I hung up, Marcus looked at me with curiosity. "Who was that on the phone, Mom?" "A lady who was asking about Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor 2 houses down. She had the wrong number completely." Lying had become surprisingly easy. Every day that passed, I felt more comfortable with this double life I was living. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother Marcus believed me to be. On the other hand, I was a wealthy woman silently orchestrating my son's salvation and education. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Marcus struggle with decisions he'd never had to make before. How to stretch limited money for food. How to negotiate with aggressive creditors. How to look for work when your credit history is completely ruined. It was a cruel but absolutely necessary education. "Mom, I went to 4 job interviews today," he told me one evening, coming home with swollen feet and an exhausted face. 3 of them told me they can't hire me because of the pending legal problems on my record. The 4th one offered me a part-time job washing dishes at a diner at night. "Are you going to take it?" "I have no choice whatsoever. It pays very little, but it's better than nothing at all, and I can work at night so I can keep looking for something better during the day." Seeing my son, who had lived a comfortable life for over 40 years, preparing to wash dishes at night, broke my heart into pieces. But it also filled me with pride. He was finally facing reality without expecting someone else to solve his problems for him. "Are you sure you can handle that much physical work?" "I'll have to learn somehow. I can't keep being a burden to you, Mom. It's bad enough that you're letting me live here completely for free. This is your home, Marcus." This is your home and I'm here only because of your incredible generosity, but I'm not going to take advantage of it forever. Promise you that." One night, while Marcus was on his first dishwashing shift, Beatrice came to visit. She sat in the kitchen with me, drinking tea and looking at the family photos on the walls. "Eleanor, I have to ask you something personal. Did you know Marcus was going to come back in these conditions?" "What do you mean exactly?" "Well, when he left, he seemed so confident and arrogant. He talked about the amazing life he was going to have in Australia, about how successful Sandra was going to make them. And now he's back, completely broken, working a dishwashing job, living with you again in his childhood bedroom. Life takes many unexpected turns, Beatrice." "Yes, but there's something else I've noticed. I've been watching Marcus these past days, and he looks different somehow. Not just sad but humble, as if he learned something important about life." Beatrice had always been very perceptive about people. "What do you think he learned?" I think he learned the value of the things he'd taken for granted his whole life, like having a mother who loves him unconditionally no matter what he does. Maybe so. Beatrice, can I tell you something honest? When Marcus left and treated you so cruelly, many of us thought you would never forgive him for it. But here you are taking care of him again, giving him a home when he has nowhere else to go. He's my son, Beatrice. Yes, but not every mother would do what you're doing right now, especially after being treated the way you were treated by him. If Beatrice only knew the complete truth, that I had the power to solve all of Marcus's problems instantly, but was choosing to let him suffer just a little longer so he would learn the full lesson he needed. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother would do in your situation, but I also think Marcus needs to fully understand what he lost when he abandoned you so carelessly. What do you mean by that? I think he needs to value you not just as the mother who rescues him when he's in trouble, but as the strong woman who built a stable life for 42 years through hard work. He needs to respect you deeply, not just need you desperately. Beatrice had hit the nail directly on the head. That was exactly the point of my entire plan. I didn't want Marcus to come back to me out of desperation alone. I wanted him to come back out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you think that can happen? I think it's already happening right now. I've seen him these past few days, Eleanor. The way he talks to you now is completely different from before. He's no longer the son who gives you orders or treats you like a burden. Now he's a grown man who is genuinely grateful to have a mother like you in his life. That night when Marcus returned from his dishwashing job, I saw him arrive tired and exhausted, but with a new kind of dignity. He'd earned those few dollars with his own hard effort, and that meant something important to him. How was your first day at work? Hard, but not as terrible as I thought it would be. The other people who worked there helped me a lot. One of them, Mr. Chen, taught me efficient techniques to work faster. Mr. Chen. He's 65 years old and has been washing dishes for 18 years. He told me he started after his business failed and he lost everything. He says it's not the job he dreamed of, but that it gave him independence and dignity when he needed it most. He sounds like a very wise man. He is indeed. He said something that made me think very deeply. He told me there are two types of people who end up doing this kind of work. The ones who are there because they never had opportunities and the ones who are there because they destroyed the opportunities they did have. He asked me which group I was in. And what did you tell him? I told him the complete truth, that I had all the opportunities in the world, a family that loved me, a stable home, an inheritance, and that I destroyed it all by following a worthless woman and making selfish choices. What did he say to that? He laughed and said, "Well, son, then at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you one step ahead of most people in this world." Marcus poured himself a glass of water and sat with me at the table. "Mom, I want you to know something important. These past few weeks have been the hardest of my entire life, but also the most valuable and important." "Why do you say that?" "Because I finally understand what really matters in life. It's not money or possessions. It's not living in the fanciest apartment. It's not impressing other people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart completely." "Marcus, no. Let me finish, please. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Dad left for you. I treated you as if you were a worthless burden. And now I'm here again expecting you to forgive me and take care of me. I already forgave you, sweetheart. But I haven't forgiven myself yet, and I won't until I prove that I've truly changed, that I've learned from my mistakes." Mr. Harrison called me the next morning with excellent news. "Mrs. Hayes, I have excellent news to share. The legal process is almost complete. We can get your son out of all of Sandra's debts completely." It was finally time. After weeks of watching Marcus struggle, work hard, and reflect on his mistakes, the moment had arrived to show him that he had never been alone, that he'd always had someone quietly watching over him. "Mr. Harrison, I want you to organize a meeting. It's time for my son to know the whole truth." Mr. Harrison arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Marcus that I'd made an appointment with a lawyer who could help him with his legal problems, but I didn't explain the details. He agreed to come, although he was nervous about the cost of the consultation. "Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I barely have enough to cover basic expenses like food." "Don't worry about that now, sweetheart. Let's just hear what he has to say first." We arrived at Mr. Harrison's office on time. Marcus had dressed in his best clothes, which now looked a little big on his thinner body. He was nervous, fidgeting with his hands, expecting another piece of bad news on his endless list of problems. Mr. Harrison greeted us with his usual professional smile. "Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming." "Thank you for seeing us," Marcus replied. "Although I should warn you that my financial situation is very complicated and I probably can't afford high legal fees." "That's exactly what we're going to discuss," Mr. Harrison said, exchanging a meaningful look with me. "But first, I need you to review these documents carefully." Mr. Harrison handed Marcus a thick folder. He opened it and began to read, his expression gradually changing from confusion to surprise to shock. "I don't understand at all. These documents say that Sandra forged my signature, that there is clear evidence of fraud, that I am not responsible for the debts at all." "That's absolutely correct. We have been investigating your case for the past several weeks. We found enough solid evidence to prove that you were a victim of identity fraud and manipulation. But how is this possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have money for anything like this." Mr. Harrison looked directly at me. It was my moment. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you right now." "What, Mom?" I took a deep breath. After weeks of acting and pretending, I was finally going to reveal the truth. "Your father left me more than you knew." "Much more." "What do you mean by that, Mr. Harrison?" "Show him the other documents." Mr. Harrison took out a second folder and handed it to Marcus. This time, the documents were the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment certificates, the entire fortune Thomas had built in secret. Marcus read in silence for several long minutes. His face went through a complete range of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally comprehension. "Mom, this says you are the owner of the shopping center where I worked. And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments. This means that when I sold the garden, it was your garden and the sale was fraudulent. I already got it back." Marcus stared at the papers, trying to process the information. "How long have you known this?" "Since the day you called me and told me you were leaving." "You knew all this when I came back from Australia asking for help." "You knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night." There was a long, tense silence. Marcus closed the folders and looked directly into my eyes. "Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me?" This was the question I had been waiting for weeks. "Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way." "What?" "You needed to learn the value of the things you had lost. The value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me. It was dignity. It was love. It was trust." Marcus started to cry, but they weren't tears of self-pity like the ones he had shed during these weeks. They were tears of deep understanding. "I abandoned you when you needed me most. I treated you like worthless garbage. And you saved me anyway." "Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself." Mr. Harrison discreetly intervened. "Mr. Brooks, your mother has paid all the legal expenses to free you from Sandra's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were sold fraudulently. You are completely free of legal problems. And the dishwashing job I got. You can quit if you want," I said. "But I hope you don't." "Why?" "Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when everything was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of valuing every dollar you earn." Marcus wiped his tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a son who needs his mother, but the look of a grown man who respects another person. "Do you forgive me, Mom?" "I forgave you a long time ago, sweetheart. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" "I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things." "People make mistakes, Marcus. The important thing is what we do after we recognize those mistakes. Mr. Harrison left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Marcus and I sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you were really the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson? That there is nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. During these past few weeks, the only thing that kept me going was knowing I had a home with you. That no matter how much I had ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Marcus. You know. But I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just words. We left Mr. Harrison's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother and son united by blood and habit. We were two grown people who had chosen each other after going through the most difficult test imaginable. The following weeks were about rebuilding, but not the kind Marcus expected. Even though he now knew I had enough resources to solve all his problems, he decided to keep his dishwashing job. Mom, I need to finish what I started, he told me one afternoon as he was getting ready for work. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened. Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. It's not a punishment. It's a way of remembering who I was and who I want to be now. I watched him put on his work clothes, something unthinkable a few months ago when he lived in the modern apartment with Sandra. But there was something different in his posture, in the way he moved. He was no longer the broken man who had arrived crying at my door. He was someone who had found dignity in honest work. Beatrice came to visit me that afternoon, as she had done every few days since Marcus had returned. Eleanor, there are some very interesting rumors going around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? People are saying that you're not as poor as we all thought. Someone saw Marcus leaving a very expensive lawyer's office downtown, and then they saw him paying off all his debts at the bank. People talk a lot, Beatrice. Yes, but they're also saying you got your garden back and that somehow you managed to solve all of Marcus's legal problems. That costs a lot of money, Eleanor. Beatrice knew me too well to fool her for long. What do you want to know exactly? I want to know if my friend of 38 years has been lying to me about her situation. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. Thomas left me more than anyone knew, Beatrice. Much more. How much more? Enough so that Marcus and I never have to worry about money again. Beatrice was silent for a moment, processing the information. And why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Marcus to learn something he couldn't learn any other way. I told her the whole story. Marcus's cruel phone call, my plan of silent revenge, the weeks of watching him hit rock bottom, and finally the revelation in Mr. Harrison's office. Eleanor, that is brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible? Yes, because you let your own son suffer when you could have helped him immediately. But also brilliant because I understand why you did it. You do. Marcus needed to learn the value of the thing he had lost. If you had simply given him money to solve his problems, he would have learned that there's always someone who will rescue him from the consequences of his bad decisions. Exactly. But Eleanor, didn't it hurt you to see him suffer? Every single day. Every night I saw him crying. Every morning I saw him get up to go to work tired and defeated. But I knew that if I rescued him too soon, he wouldn't have learned the full lesson. And do you think he learned it? Look for yourself. Marcus knows that he now has access to enough money to live comfortably, but he chose to keep his job. He knows he can move to a better place, but he decided to stay here with me. He knows he doesn't have to worry about the debts, but he's using his own savings to help other people in similar situations. He's helping other people. Yes, he became friends with the people he works with and is using some of the money he earned washing dishes to help a coworker who is having trouble paying for his daughter's school fees. Beatrice smiled. That's not the Marcus who went to Australia. No, he's not. This Marcus understands that money is a tool, not a goal. He understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.